Celebrity clothing brands are a dime a dozen at this point, promising to give their fans a taste of their high-end lifestyles. But is the clothing actually any good? I'm a fashion designer, and today we're going to look at 3 items from Kylie Jenner's Kai line and discuss whether the quality is actually there. These are vile, oh my god, and whether I think her clothes are worth their not insignificant price point. I also chatted with marketing professor Dr. Jenna Jacobson to get her take on celebrity brands in general. I have a background in outerwear, so we're going to start with this puffer jacket. It cost about $200 when it was available online. I bought it secondhand. So my first reaction to this jacket is that the hand feel of the outer fabric is quite odd. It definitely feels like plastic. The fiber content is 100% polyester with a polyurethane coating, so I guess it's that coating that gives it the plasticky feel. It probably gives it some qualities like water repellency, which I can certainly understand the utility of. However, it just feels so weird, and listen to that sound it makes when you scratch it. Plastic. I want to talk about pricing for a second as well, not just because this fabric feels kind of cheap, but because that's an element of celebrity brands that has always intrigued me. Like with Rihanna's brand, Fenty, it was an LVMH-backed venture, so the price was fairly high. Like we're talking $600 to $700 for dresses and almost $200 for a t-shirt. And the brand ended up shuttering after only a few years. Whereas her lingerie brand, Savage by Fenty, has a much more affordable price point and has done a lot better. And we see here with Kylie's line that, you know, this jacket is $200, which some people would argue is expensive. I mean, you could find a cheaper jacket at H&M. Not that I'd recommend that, they're the devil. However, it's nowhere near the price points of, you know, a luxury outerwear brand like Montclair or Canada Goose. So I asked Dr. Jenna Jacobson, she's a professor at Toronto Metropolitan University, for her take on pricing and celebrity clothing brands. She had this to say. Typically, when you're looking at celebrity brands, they're going to be at a higher price point than, you know, your fast fashion, because they have that prestige already associated with it. For celebrities, one of the most important things that they need to think about is the fit or the authenticity of it. So if you have a celebrity who's, you know, very wealthy and is then selling, let's say, a very cheap product, it may not seem very authentic, and it also doesn't allow people to buy into the hype that is surrounding it. She also went on to say, you can also have a situation where the price is not reflective of what consumers want to spend. So if something is overpriced, or that doesn't warrant a price point that people are willing to pay, then you'll see, you know, disappointing sales there. So I thought that was just really good context to have when discussing these products that I'm reviewing, so thank you, Dr. Jacobson. I will share more of her thoughts towards the end of the video. Let's get back to the jacket. The fit, to be frank with you, is extremely odd. Now, I appreciate that they were going for a more avant-garde silhouette, but I really think they could have workshopped it a lot more. So the waist is very fitted. I just have a simple t-shirt underneath, and frankly, that's kind of all there is room for. It feels reminiscent of a corset, which, considering this is a brand coming out of the Kardashian-Jenner empire, is unsurprising. And I actually think the waist fits decently as long as the wearer is prepared to not have a lot of layers underneath the coat. Now the top is where we have problems. I can appreciate what they were going for with the spherical shape at the shoulder, chest, and arms, but I don't think they hit the mark. In particular, the upper bust/front armhole has such an excess of fabric, I don't really know what body type this would look good on. If it were me designing this jacket and I did a fitting and saw all of this excess here, I'd be like, okay, we need to find a way to absorb that excess through some of these style lines somehow, because this doesn't look cool and it just looks like it fits poorly to me. Interestingly, it is less obvious on the product photo. There does look like there is some excess, but it's kind of hidden, so I'm wondering if they maybe like pinned or taped or adjusted it somehow so that it was less obvious for the website. Let's talk about the quilting for a second. So these stitching lines are called quilting lines, where the outer fabric is sewn to the lining and it's filled with down or some other kind of fill to give it that puffy look and to give it insulation for warmth. I like the placement of the lines. I appreciate the shape they're going for with that. However, the actual stitching itself is kind of messy. There are loose threads everywhere. There are areas where little folds of fabric are getting sewn down when they should not be. And the most egregious thing to me is these random back stitches in obvious places. So those of you who sew will know that sometimes as you're sewing, a thread will break on you or your bobbin will run out of thread. So you have to restart your stitching line. And when you do that, you do a few stitches backwards and then a few more forwards, and that's what's called a back stitch. The thing is, I used to be a sewing machine operator at Canada Goose, and if you had a problem like that where you had to restart in the middle of your stitching line, you were not allowed to just backstitch and pick up where you left off. You had to pull all of that row out and start again from the top, because a backstitch in an obvious place like that just doesn't look very nice. Also, we definitely would have had a QC person come talk to us if there were that many loose threads, because Frankly, it is excessive. Overall, I think the design of this jacket makes sense in terms of what Dr. Jacobson was talking about in terms of the price being not too low, but also not too high. Design features obviously have to fit within the chosen price point. So when we look at the design of this jacket, you could have something that's lower quality. You could have a jacket with less style lines that was less fitted at the waist. This jacket also has a cord lock so that you can tighten the waist even further. It's sewn into a channel inside the jacket, and a cheaper jacket might not have details like that. On the other hand, the fit is certainly not impeccable. The quality of the fabric doesn't seem super great, and the stitching could, use some work. So it's not a basement, bottom tier brand design-wise, but it's certainly not a level of quality that one would expect from a luxury brand either. Before moving on, I just want to address the mood that I am bringing into filming this video today. Filming this video was really hard because I woke up this morning and learned that Palestinian journalist Anas al-Sharif had been unalived by the Israeli army. And it was really hard to film this video. I cried about it, and I felt like I couldn't talk about what I was talking about without addressing Gaza and also Sudan. I've linked some resources in the description. Please pressure your governments for a ceasefire in the region to sanction the Israeli government and complicit parties in the engineered humanitarian disaster in Sudan, which includes the UAE. And if you have the resources, please consider donating. I've put some links in the description. With a broken heart, let's carry on. Next up is pants. These are vile. Oh my god. The feeling of this fabric is quite unpleasant. It almost feels like these resistance bands that I use for exercise. Definitely not something that I would want to have against my body when I'm like, sweating in it. I'm not even going to try these on because I kid you not, these are going to not even fit over half of my butt. If you're the kind of person who likes to let their crack hang out, all the power to you. However, I prefer to have more than a third of my butt covered when I'm out and about in the world. It's an extra small where normally I would wear an extra small, and in this brand I have a feeling I'd probably have to size up to a small. But even so, even in a bigger size, when I look at the rise of these pants, something about it just doesn't feel right. It feels a little bit too short. So I have a feeling that even in the proper size, these would not fully cover the areas that need to be covered. Speaking of pattern making problems, what the heck is going on at the crotch? Why is it curling in like that? I'm very confused. Nothing is balanced about these pants. They're twisting, they're pulling in weird ways, they're not symmetrical. Oh, and also the crotch seams are not lined up, which is a pretty easy mistake to make if you've ever tried sewing pants yourself. However, it also speaks to somewhat lax quality control standards. Also, these pants weren't hemmed. They're just raw. And the thread ends from the serged inseams and outseams are just hanging there. In conclusion, these pants are an abomination and they are going to go straight to the textile recycling bin. I am not even going to try to give these away. Last but not least, I have to talk about a bodycon dress because that's what Kylie's brand is kind of known for. There is not a lot to talk about here, quite frankly, because it is a pretty basic dress. It does fit well. It fits the way you'd expect a bodycon dress to fit. There aren't any noticeable excesses of fabric anywhere. However, I will say it is a lot easier to fit this kind of very tight-fitting dress than other types of garments, because with this level of stretch, you don't need darts or other shaping tools, just a lot of negative ease. This dress is lined with self fabric. Self fabric just means the body fabric, so that gives it a bit more opacity and also means that there are no raw edges hanging out. This is a very basic construction technique. However, fast fashion has set a new extremely low bar where garments are unlined and raw edges and exposed seams are just hanging out for all to see, so at least they didn't do that. So before I recap what I think of the Kai brand and whether or not I think it's worth buying, spoiler alert, I'm going to share another quote by Dr. Jacobson about celebrity brands and why they exist. Like, these people are not designers generally, so why are they launching clothing brands? Dr. Jacobson had this to say: celebrity brands have existed for quite a long time, and this is because we live in an era where attention is a commodity. It's currency, and celebrities come equipped with the thing that retailers or brands are very eager to have, and that is a built-in audience. So rather than trying to build up an audience of a new brand that you would have if, let's say, you were an unknown designer developing a new product and trying to get it out to market, these celebrities have these built-in audiences and people are eager to connect to them. They don't need to just sell the products because they've already sold themselves. They already have consumers who have bought into them as a brand, so these celebrity brands really just serve as an extension of the celebrity themselves. She went on to talk about parasocial relationships. So you have the social relationship, and a lot of this is these relationships where a regular consumer develops this strong sense of connection with somebody that they don't know, that they've never met, that they don't have a real life relationship with. And this could be a celebrity or a social media influencer. So you have these strong parasocial relationships where people feel like they're genuinely connected to that celebrity. So then when you're trying for the celebrity to, profit off of that, they're creating these brands. I found that really fascinating, and I think this really emphasizes why I prefer to support independent brands, because they're created by designers or founders who are really passionate about craft, or about good design, or about solving a genuine problem that people have, not about profiting off of a parasocial relationship. I have a few videos coming up where I'm going to be platforming independent designers that I think are really cool, so please subscribe if you don't want to miss that. Alright, so without further ado, my overall thoughts on Kai. Purely aesthetics-wise, I can appreciate that there is some attempt at originality going on. Of course, some of her stuff is a bit cookie cutter, which I think is to be expected from a brand that makes a lot of basics. But the jacket I thought was really interesting. It's not something we've seen a lot of, although Versace has done something similar. But Kylie's was different enough that it feels designed with a unique point of view to me. And if they had really nailed the fit at the top, I think it would actually be quite a cool piece. I also think it's pretty cool that she's collaborating with amazing independent designers like Dilara Findikoglu, and I would be interested in buying one of those pieces secondhand just to kind of see what it's like, although to be honest, I probably prefer to save up and just buy a legit Dilara piece instead. In terms of quality, it seems to be kind of variable. Those pink pants are an absolute disaster. I had nothing good to say about them. And all I can say is I hope they didn't make too many of those because they will probably all be in a landfill pretty soon. In terms of the other two pieces I looked at, the quality is okay. They certainly are not made of fine fabrics by any stretch of the imagination. However, the fabrics have some heft to it. They don't feel like they're about to disintegrate. And the construction itself feels pretty solid as well. Overall, would I purchase any of this stuff new? No, I don't think I would. Especially because I don't know anything about how ethical their production practices are. I suspect not very ethical. That said, I wouldn't have a problem buying something secondhand if there were a piece that really caught my eye. Maybe not a pair of pants though. I'm a little skeptical about their pants, and definitely not those pink pants. Those were a complete abomination. Alright, thanks so much for watching, friends. See you in the next video.